is the consent calendar and approval of the agenda. Manny, would you start the public sign-up video or clock on that one? And there are 6 items on the consent calendar tonight. Let me ask if there's anyone on the council who wishes to pull any one of those 6 items. Yes, Councilmember Bergenzer.
It's not to pull a consent item, but I would like to move an action item forward. Action 9C could be moved to 9.1 on the action calendar.
Okay, so that will be addressed by the Vice Mayor. You want to make 9C the first item heard on the action calendar? All right. And anybody else?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
You have before you this evening a correction to item 8C, as in cat, and I want to make sure that if the council moves that item forward, that the corrected resolution is included within the motion relating to the consent calendar. Thank you.
Yes, I believe we've all received that modified motion, so that will be incorporated within the motion for approval. Anybody else? Do we have any speakers yet?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, we do have 5 speakers for consent in person.
All right. Well, let's make sure they're on the consent calendar, not on something else. So go ahead and start calling them in one by one. We will ask you to identify the consent item by letter A through F that you desire to speak on.
Yes, the first speaker is Brian Davis.
I want to speak on 8F. It's a 4-minute speech, so Maya is going to finish with her time she signed up for. Good evening, council members. I'm Brian Davis, project director of LGBTQ- tobacco. Congratulations on receiving this.
Excuse me, sir. The tobacco ordinance is on the action calendar. We're on the consent calendar.
I think he wants to speak to the grant.
8F.
F. Okay, go ahead.
Congratulations on receiving this extensive funding from the DOJ. This will give you an excellent resource to begin completing the activities associated with enforcing the TRL. Please be aware, however, that this funding is not guaranteed beyond the 3 years of this grant. For this reason, it is important to establish a tobacco license fee as a part of the TRL adoption process, or shortly thereafter, that sufficiently covers the cost of consistently maintaining an effective program into the future. Under normal circumstances, this fee would be paid yearly by tobacco retailers as soon as it is established. This body may determine that it is more appropriate to not require payment of the license fee until such a time as the DOJ funds are no longer available, but the best practice is to establish the amount of the fee based upon the full cost of the activities associated with an effective enforcement program at the beginning, rather than attempting to revisit it later. It's also important to note that the scope of work defined by the DOJ grant, as best as we can understand it from the information provided, does not necessarily include the full range of activities that would be needed to completely address the problem. Just a reminder that in recent years, 30 to 45% of Vallejo tobacco retailers visited have sold to underage decoys. For example, only 24 of the 96 tobacco retailers in Vallejo will be visited by youth decoys under the DOJ grant. Also, next month, it will be 2 years since it became illegal statewide to sell nearly all flavored tobacco, and yet many retailers across the state, including in Vallejo, have been observed selling menthol cigarettes and flavored vape products under the counter. To address the latter problem, flavored tobacco purchase decoy operations conducted by adults are highly advisable, but the DOJ scope of work doesn't appear to include that activity. Another area where the DOJ scope of work is unclear is whether the cost of managing retailer appeals will be included. These costs can be significant, as it can require a good deal of city staff time to prepare materials for administrative hearings. Also, an administrative judge must be brought on for the hearing, and city staff must manage the process. The good news is that regardless of whether the DOJ grant covers these expenses, they need not be included in the cost of the yearly tobacco license paid by all tobacco retailers, but can be levied as a fine against specific retailers who challenge the suspension of their license. Many jurisdictions use some form of this process. I'll let Amaya continue.
Yes, I was going to say that. We have a list of people that have signed up, so the next person is Jimmy Ansira, and then, Amaya, you can come back up. So Jimmy Ansira, please. Okay, so I'm trying to follow order here. So Jimmy, you're not going to speak, or you're going to speak after Amaya? You're not going to speak. Okay, Amaya, come on back.
Thank you. Amaya Wooding, LGBTQ minus tobacco. Yes, it's also good news that what tends to happen is that the number of appeals goes down significantly over time as the bulk of appeals are unsuccessful. So what would an appropriate license fee be that would cover all of these best practices? You may recall that our coalition partner, Bay Area Community Resources, has experience in this area and has offered to help in exchange for a portion of the license fee. Based on the yearly estimates that they've provided recently, a yearly fee that would cover both their costs and the city's expenses related to the issuing and maintenance of licenses would be about $900 per retailer. This is in the vicinity of TRL fee amounts collected by jurisdictions with effective enforcement programs. In the short term, it's unclear to us whether BACR would be able to partner with the city in exchange for performing enforcement activities required by the DOJ funding, and we would like to know that answer as soon as possible. But it may potentially be possible for BACR to do the additional work not covered by the DOJ scope of work that would increase the effectiveness of the program, such as extending youth deco operations to all retailers on an annual basis, as well as performing adult deco operations for flavored tobacco purchases in exchange for a portion of the tobacco retail license fee, should you decide to require tobacco retailers to pay the full amount or some of it in the near future to cover those additional activities. So in any case, our project, LGBTQ minus tobacco, stands ready to provide technical assistance in support of whatever process the city chooses to follow in fulfillment of the DOJ grant requirements. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Nefer Kelly, followed by Joseph Hayden. Oh, not on this one. Okay, Joseph Hayden.
Hello, I'm also speaking on item 8F. Good evening. I'm Joseph Hayden, a Vallejo resident. I volunteer as co-chair of Tobacco Free Solano and with LGBTQ minus tobacco. I'm so thrilled that with the encouragement of our coalition, Vallejo applied for and received $930,000 from the California Department of Justice to support the efforts toward a forthcoming tobacco retail license here. That will, in turn, protect more Vallejo youth and other citizens from becoming addicted to tobacco and then suffering and dying prematurely from tobacco-related illnesses. This TRL was always intended to be enforced by civilians, regardless of how many code enforcement officers we may have at any given time. Bay Area Community Resources, our coalition partner, is ready, willing, and able to assist with retailer education and enforcement. BACR has empowered Vallejo youth for years to fight for their best lives. With these future leaders, I've been honored to present, advocate, and even appear on our local FM radio station with them on this important issue for several years now. It's now imperative that the city prepare for adequate license fees that will carry us forward to accomplish what the impending TRL was intended to do. That is to reduce the outrageous number of tobacco retailers we have for a city of 126,000. You'll recall that we have about 100, which is twice the number that one would expect for cities of our population. After the initial funding of the DOJ lapses, this ordinance will still cost the taxpayers nothing, provided we set these fees appropriately. Accordingly, I ask that you instruct city staff to conscientiously calculate Vallejo's long-term needs for these fees so that enforcement will be realistic henceforth. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional speakers?
That's it, Mr. Mayor, for the in-person.
Okay.
And through the mayor, we do have one speaker online.
Call that person, please.
Kaylin K., please state which item you would like to speak on.
Hello, I would like to speak on item 8F, please.
Go ahead.
Hi, good evening, City Council. My name is Kaylin Kelly, and I am the project director for Bay Area Community Resources. Congratulations on receiving the DOJ grant. I am just here to reaffirm what my colleagues and community members have already mentioned about Bay Area Community Resources being ready to work with the city to do retailer education as well as youth decoy operations. And we've been doing this work for a very long time. Our youth are trained not just to internalize the information about retailer education, but they're also trained to become community advocates, sharing this information with their peers, their parents, and oftentimes with city council members such as yourselves and local elected leaders. They are very qualified and highly knowledgeable and viable for this task. And so I would urge you to work with us. We're definitely ready and willing, and we would love the opportunity to create a successful effort for Vallejo residents that indeed deserve this great opportunity to be tobacco free. Thank you very much, and congratulations again.
All right, thank you very much. And just out of curiosity from staff, um, how would some of these points and concerns of these groups be addressed after the grant has been received?
So after the grant, at this point in time, the grant does not include us contracting out any of the enforcement or education purposes. That's not a listed use of the grant funding. So staff will be doing that ourselves, or if we cannot, then we will need to apply for an amendment to the grant. We can only do that once, so we have to be careful about how we go about it. With regard to after the grant, council is not aware, but we have sent out our noticing for the setting of the fees. So as the council, once the council, if the council, I'm not going to presume, introduces and then adopts this ordinance, at the time of the adoption of the ordinance, and I'm going to look to staff in the audience who can probably tell me what the date is that we will be considering the fees. We have been working with a consultant to evaluate the cost to the city, including staff time, et cetera, associated with the development and rolling out of this program, as well as the enforcement actions. And that consultant is approaching conclusion of that work, and we will be bringing that forward to the council on
December 10th.
Thank
December
you.
10th.
On December 10th.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much for that information. Appreciate it. Vice Mayor, do we have a motion?
We do, Mayor. I move to approve the consent calendar and approval of the agenda. In the motion, we will be adding the corrected resolution to item 8C and also move item 9C to make it 9.1.
Okay, thank you very much. Please vote on the screen.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right, that brings us to our action calendar, and the first item is 9.1, formerly 9C. Madam Clerk, would you announce that item, and secondly, start the clock, Manny, for public sign-up?
Introduction of an ordinance adding Chapter 5.10 to the Vallejo Municipal Code relating to tobacco retail licensing and amending Chapters 7.68, 16.301, 16.340, and 16.701 relating to tobacco retailers and use permit requirements, and repealing Chapter 7.69 relating to restrictions on accessibility of tobacco products.
And do we have a presentation from somebody?
Well, we do, so, but I have to find my place in the ordinance since we have moved it up, so my apologies. What?
It is, no, it's 9.1. Action calendar. No. And we're on to 9C now.
Yeah, it's not. It's okay. That's my fault. I do, but I need the ordinance, so just give me a minute, please. Okay. All right. My apologies for that slight delay. So before you this evening, you have the introduction of the tobacco retailer license ordinance, as well as the concomitant ordinances that go with it and the amendments thereto to conform the zoning code as we had previously discussed. So as council, I'm not going to start over and explain this whole ordinance. We've been here now, I think, 4 times with a full explanation of the entirety of the ordinance. So I'm going to jump off where we last left off. Staff sought direction from the City Council at your September 24th meeting regarding the things that we heard during our community meetings with the tobacco retailers and proponents of this ordinance. Were issues that the council wanted to consider the discussion that was raised at those community meetings. So you did that at that meeting on September 24th, and at the conclusion of that staff presentation, public comment, and all of the council deliberation, you landed on asking us to return with the ordinance at a subsequent meeting, that's your public hearing this evening, to bring forward options for amending the TRL ordinance on 2 issues. That issue of transferability, and I'm putting that in quotes because we're going to need to talk about what that really means, because I think there are some people who are confused about that. And also to delete the criminal penalties that were contained within the ordinance. That was a direction of the City Council. So the ordinance that is before you this evening is designed to do both of those things, and I'm going to ultimately walk you through those amendments that are contained in red line format in your packet, beginning on page 979, your red numbers in the bottom of your packet. So what is transferability? We keep using the term transferability to describe an issue that is raised in this ordinance around and surrounding the idea of whether or not a tobacco retailer who does not currently comply with the location and density requirements of that this ordinance will impose, whether or not the ordinance contains an exemption for those individuals, and the question is whether the exemption is transferable. So transferability is not about transferring the tobacco retail license. None of them are transferable. Every single individual who is currently operating tobacco retail sales and everyone who would in the future be operating tobacco retail sales must have their own license. They're not transferable to anyone. They are personal licenses to the operator. The question of the transfer, again, relates to not to the transfer of the license itself, but the transfer of the location and density exemptions from an existing retailer that's currently legal and is getting exempted from being too close to a school or too close to another thing that the ordinance prohibits, or the numbers game, etc. It's whether or not that is transferable to a new buyer if that person wants to sell that now conforming, if we'll call it that, business because it has an exemption. Is the exemption transferable, not the license? Next slide, Manny, please. So what is the location exemption? As previously proposed, existing retailers, and I'm going to say that were legally established, meaning they followed all the rules when they first opened, are exempted from proximity and density requirements as set forth in, and I'm going to tell you the subsections, 5.10050D through G, it's in the ordinance, and can receive a retail license regardless of their location or density limitations. So again, today, if you exist, you were legal when you were established, and you apply for the ordinance for the license by the deadline set forth in the ordinance, the location requirements won't keep you from getting that license. However, as originally written, it is not transferable, meaning it's only for the current retailer at the current location. That a purchaser of the business at that location would have to cease selling tobacco products, if they bought that business at that location, meaning they could still buy a business. Let's say it's a convenience store. You could buy it, but they wouldn't be able to sell tobacco at that convenience store because that location is not transferable as a tobacco retail license location. Okay, so next slide. Yes, sorry. I'm sorry, say it again, back up, Manny, I'm sorry. Which part is what? Oh, okay. That section of the ordinance, the exemption itself is, as it says here, 510050D through G. So that occurs on page 9. Well, let's start with 9. 9 says where a tobacco retailer can be located. Can't have mobile vending. You can see A, can't be next to a cannabis business. Pharmacies can no longer sell at all. Can't be within 1,000 feet of a youth-oriented facility. Can't be within 1,000 feet of one another. The two tobacco retailer, I'm sorry? Well, for anybody, but then there are exemptions for the current owners. Anyway, so the exemption section is contained within that same section 510050H, and that is on page 9 of the red line version of this ordinance. That's the first attachment in your packets. And you can see that that H provides that if you were a legal retailer at the location, you don't have to comply with those density requirements and or proximity regulations relating to your location. However, that's only for you, as currently written. If the business sells or transfers, the new owner does not get those exemptions as it was originally written. And that is the primary issue that we've been talking about for the last at least year. How does that relate to people who have established their businesses, are currently working in their businesses, and again, are concerned about losing value associated with their businesses if they cannot transfer them? So that is one of the issues before you tonight, and when we get to that point, we'll walk through some options that the council asked us to place into the ordinance, and you guys can decide, the council as a whole, the council majority, can decide what of those options you are in favor of, and then you can, if you choose, introduce the ordinance this evening. So right now, if you turn to page 10 or 988 within your the red numbers in the bottom right-hand corner of your packets, you will see that under H, we have made some changes, and we have made put in some choices. And I'll talk about the changes a little later that don't relate to the choices, because the choices are what we're primarily here to talk about. Other changes that we've made to this ordinance are for clarity purposes. But right now, as H3 states, the right to maintain your location that does not otherwise comply with the ordinance, too close to something else, right, as I just described, is lost if you transfer the business to a new proprietor, and then you can see the yellow under subsection 3. We've added at any time after, and we've put in some dates. The first date is about 5 years from January. The second date is about 10 years, so 2026 or 2031, or we've allowed a different date. What those changes to the ordinance do is they extend out those sale provisions to anybody within whatever year you decide is the end of the game. That allows that exemption to be sold, for lack of a better word, to a buyer of a tobacco retailer. Your final option with regard to that is to remove that provision altogether. And at that point, if you remove 3A as in Apple altogether, then there would be no time limit on, and tobacco retailers would be able to transfer the exemption when the new buyer gets a new license. The second option that is in here, or the second thing that we included in this, has to do with violations. So we talked about whether or not if you had violations at your current location, if an ability to transfer would carry, for lack of a better word, over to a new buyer at any time if there were violations. So subsection C here has been added, where the location of the tobacco retail license holder has committed 2 or more violations of this chapter within a option, 1-year period, 2-year period, 5-year period, other. That was, again, to try to incentivize compliance with the ordinance. If you want to be able to transfer at all during that 5-year, 10-year, or forever option period, that if you were violating the ordinance, then that transferability would be lost. So those are the options that we have brought forward on the issue of transferring the exemption for the location requirements to a buyer. You will be asked this evening to choose from those highlighted options or omit either one or both of those subsections. Manny, next slide, please. As you directed, this revised version of the ordinance that is before you this evening, staff has also deleted the criminal liability prosecution sections in their entirety. So we've remained with the administrative citation process, which is essentially a fine process before a hearing body. And we have also retained our right to sue civilly for specific performance, essentially. We did not change, and I just want to make that clear. Tobacco retailers themselves remain responsible for their actions and the actions of their employees. However, employees can also be cited, not criminally, but through the administrative citation process if they are also violating, and that's another way of gaining compliance. Next slide. So let's talk about other changes to this ordinance, and I'm going to ask you to turn yourselves back to the very first page of the ordinance. As we were talking with people who had comments about the ordinance, and again, back to this transferability question, transferring the exemptions for locations, it became kind of apparent to us that people didn't understand clearly what the prohibition of transferring that location meant when it said a transfer to someone for value in an arm's length transaction. So you can see that in section 5.10.010 of the ordinance, we have added some provisions to make clear what an arm's length transaction is, and we have removed some ambiguity from that section as well. As this section currently read in the original draft of this ordinance, it stated the following: an arm's length transaction means a sale in good faith and for valuable consideration that reflects the fair market value between two informed and willing parties, neither of which is under any compulsion to participate in the transaction. So think of it like your common retail sale of anything, or think of it also like a real estate transaction. You want to sell your house, somebody wants to buy your house, and they are going to pay you the fair market value of the value of your home or your business, and there isn't a discount or another type of transaction. It's just a fair market value transfer from one party to another. So the problem with using the term fair market value in this, and we have now in this version deleted fair market value, is that someone could get around this provision by selling for something less than fair market value, getting an appraisal, and then saying, see, I sold it for $5,000 under fair market value, so this provision doesn't apply, it wasn't an arm's length transaction. So we removed that ambiguity from the ordinance. It's got to be an actual arm's length transaction, but it doesn't have to be fair market value. But we've also described what an arm's length transaction isn't. The location requirement exemptions continue to apply if you interfamily transfer, right? So bequest, devise, transfer to your child, transfer to your niece, and I'll read all of them. Bequest, inheritance, devise, or other transaction for less than fair market value to a spouse, domestic partner, cohabitant, by the way, domestic needs to be corrected, the spelling, cohabitant, child, stepchild, grandchild, parent, step-parent, parent-in-law, child-in-law, grandparent, great-grandparent, sibling, half-sibling, step-sibling, niece, nephew by blood or marriage, and first cousins. Basically, family of the first degree, right? It basically says anybody within your family, when you transfer it, either because someone died or someone retires or whatever, and you're not charging them the fair market, your family member, the fair market value of it, that's not an arm's length transaction, which means it isn't a true transfer, which means the exemptions for location can be transferred within your family. The ordinance already read that, I want to be clear, but we tried to make it crystal clear because it occurred to us as we were going through this ordinance and the questions we were receiving that people just didn't understand that. So I want to make sure everybody now understands if a tobacco retailer has a tobacco retail license location and obtains their license and it's otherwise legal, and they die or they want to retire and transfer it to their own child, they can do that and still retain the exemptions. But they can't sell it as the ordinance currently reads unless you go back to those other sections and make those exemptions explicit. Other amendments to the ordinance, next slide, sorry. We made some minor modifications to the timing for submittal of an initial TRL application. In the original version of this ordinance, it was 60 days. Because we have yet to develop the applications and have the people understand what a full application is, we extended that for an additional 30 days to 90 from the effective date of the ordinance. And that's in section 510.050H1. We also, this is a staffing issue a little bit. We have almost 100 licenses, as council is aware. We've talked about this, or 100 potential licenses to be issued. 100 retailers within the city, give or take, it's like 96 or 98. That's a lot of applications for staff to process in a fairly short period of time. And the issue, let's be clear about the issue, what work is contained within processing one of these applications. Staff is going to get this application, it's going to have all of the application information in it. But because the issue in the ordinance for the initial issuance of a license is the business had to have been legal at the location that it is currently at when the business was established. That's a lot of research for staff for every single one of these 90 some odd permits. They're never going to get it done in the first 90 days, and that's if people apply on day one, which some will and some won't. So we have extended the time for them to get a response back to 180 days instead of 90. Now, some will get it back much shorter than that, but we didn't want people to be out of compliance if they were the last one for staff to review. The third change is the clear definition of what operating lawfully means. You had any permit you needed, you had your permits from the state. If it required a use permit at the location because of size, you got one. All of that falls into the question of what operating lawfully means. Felt like it needed more meat on those bones. So we added a definition within chapter 510.050. You will find that at H4. The last item, I think it's the last item, that we did was we added section 510.140A5 to conform to other sections of the ordinance related to the loss of location exemptions where the retailer ceases conducting business for more than 60 consecutive days. Why that needed to be conformed is, in some instances, you might get put out of business for 60 days because you did something not okay, right? That's one of the penalties. And we wanted to make sure that the penalties matched up in those numbers of days so that we didn't have sort of an inadvertent, well, we impose the penalty on you and now we take your license away altogether. So that's what that conformance is about. Next slide, Manny. Or is that the last one? Oh, we don't need that one. Thank you. So I'm here to answer questions that the council may have. If after the public gets the opportunity to speak, and remember the public has the opportunity to speak on this ordinance that we've just been talking about, the licensing ordinance, but as you are aware, there are all the other changes to other provisions of the code that conform those other provisions of the code to this ordinance that are also before you this evening, and which presumably, possibly, you will also be introducing. So we're here to answer any questions relating to that. Also, at the end, we'll walk you through the choices one more time so it's clear that you understand it and answer any questions that the council may have.
All right, thank you very much. At this time, we'll close the speakers list. How many speakers do we have, both in person first and then virtually?
We have 15 in-person speakers.
All right, please, is there an interest in the council in limiting the period of time of debate?
I'm sorry, I
Is there any
neglected to
interest on
point.
council?
I'm sorry, I neglected to point out that we do have translators here this evening, and so if anybody does need those translators, they are here too. I
Oh.
should have pointed that out at the beginning. My apologies.
And what languages are those translators able to handle?
I know that Punjabi is one of them, and I believe there's also a Farsi translator. So Farsi and Punjabi.
Punjabi and Farsi, okay.
And through the mayor, we also have captions and translations available if they want to use cell phones. There's a QR code on screen and then QR codes throughout the chambers if they just want to access the captions that way.
Okay, well, we'll take that one as we get to it because that's a new process. All right, how many speakers in person?
There are 15
15.
in-house speakers, and I've been asked by Councilmember Verdoliga to allow them the full 3 minutes, but the people that have translation needs should be allowed more time.
All right, so the 3 minutes includes translation time as well as their representations?
No, if everybody's going to get 3 minutes, if a person needs a translator, they get a little bit more time, because with the translator, they would need another minute or two.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Vice Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And the reason for giving them the 3 minutes is this is a very sensitive issue, as well as, I also met with a couple of the tobacco retailers. There's an issue with English as a second language, and I'm a second language speaker, although I've been here many, many times, and I always need clarification from Veronica, such as this morning when we spoke. So that's the reason. And if those folks that I've talked to and other folks who want to speak, if you do not understand or did not understand what City Attorney Veronica Neb explained, ask her to explain it again by giving an exact example, retailer A, retailer B, family member, non-arm's length, that's it's a pretty heavy word. Explain exactly what that is. Please don't be bashful in asking for clarification. Okay? Just wanted to make sure that that's out there. So thank you.
All right.
So Mayor, what is the direction? How much time?
Well, if we're going to give 3 minutes to each speaker and we need additional time for translator, then translator should have 3 and the speakers should have 3.
Okay, so we'll call the first one. The first speaker is Brian Davis.
Good evening again, council members. Brian Davis, Project Director of LGBTQ- Tobacco. First, in terms of the suggested changes that were discussed by the city attorney, in terms of the penalty section where it's talking about the number of years that would need to, where the number of violations would be counted. In other words, to determine whether the license exemption could be transferred or not by that business. The standard for counting violations when it comes to the penalty structure we see in cities and counties around the Bay Area is 5 years. So that would be the standard, the best practice to look at for that section that you're talking about. Hopefully that's clear. Wanted to make the point in general about the part that hasn't been discussed as much. Just want to make sure that it's still clear with everybody, which is that 100 studies show that when the price of tobacco goes up, high school age smoking rate goes down and more adults quit smoking. That 70% of adults want to quit, so the added incentive of higher prices saves lives. Potentially flavored and unflavored varieties of cigarillo-type cigars like Swisher Sweets, again, can be easily purchased in Vallejo for less than $1.50 for a pack of 2. Some singles can be bought for under $1. You may recall one of the times I spoke with you recently, I shared that I found a wrapper for a pack of 5 flavored cigarillos on the grounds of City Hall that day that was priced at $1.49. The most recent minimum prices for cigarettes cigarettes and cigarillos adopted by Bay Area jurisdictions are in line with the Surgeon General's 2014 recommendation of a $10 minimum price for a pack of cigarettes. Taking inflation into account, that would be $13 today. Union City recently adopted a $15 minimum price requirement for a package of 10 cigarillos. The Bay Area standard is to establish the same minimum price for cigarettes and cigarillos. These cheap prices, added to how easy it is for underage youth to get tobacco in Vallejo and the continued availability of flavored tobacco products nearly 2 years after the state law making most flavored products illegal, creates a deadly combination of factors for Vallejo youth. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Hayden. He fell off.
Hello again. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a Vallejo resident, but I'm also a close family member to too many who have died young from their addiction to commercial tobacco. I so appreciate the opportunity to work with city staff, city attorney, and others to get this TRL in front of you, especially given that Vallejo had amongst the worst youth tobacco sale rates in the Bay Area in recent years. The centuries with the legalized sale of poison still does not make it normal to ingest just because the industry keeps coming up with ways to funnel it to our youth. They know that almost 0 adults begin addictions to tobacco and nicotine. With the TRL, Vallejo citizens want to see results. A reduction in blight and food deserts should become a natural consequence of the TRL. I know it's possible to achieve our goal of having the number of retailers, which is what the ordinance numerically dictates. Accordingly, in future years, I hope the city intends to publicize written reports at least every 6 months, detailing how many retailers were checked, how many were in compliance, and how many were penalized. This way, we aren't just passing laws to feel warm and fuzzy, but making a material difference in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Paul Matharu.
How's it going, guys? Back at it. Since there was a bunch of changes that were announced, I think we need to have a little bit more of a time period to learn more about them. There's some of us here, as we always do bring up, that don't have, they're not first language English speakers. Some people that couldn't be here because they're at their business. We are small family businesses, so we do need to learn more about, arm's length sales. How does the exemption work for if, somebody passes away, the passing on of such things. So there does need to be more time for that, I think. The second is, nobody brought this up till today, that California passed AB 3218 on September 28th, and that increases penalties for any retailer who sells flavors or menthols, and it actually includes the wholesalers. Now, I had brought this up at the first meeting. I don't know if any of you remember that the wholesalers are selling these items still without any repercussions. So with that coming into effect, because it's already passed, a lot of this becomes almost egregious. And targeting of small businesses who already are following the law will end up following this one, and our main concern still falls under the exemption, if you want to call it that, the transferability. Everybody's concerned about the value of their small business. We're with the proponents and all the health stuff. I think we've talked about that in length. It's more about the businesses in your town and how do we protect those businesses. And again, the flavors are already illegal. and so are the menthols. None of the companies are here talking against this or for this, and the state's already passed 3218, making it more penalties for anybody who still sells things, because maybe they're buying from out of state or something, I don't know. Again, we're with the proponents on most of the issues. Our main concern is just simply our business. We're here in Vallejo, we've been here for many years, we want to continue to do that, and we want to give anybody who, let's say tomorrow my dad wants to sell his business, the opportunity to still be able to get a license, because we're now exempt, so we should continue to be exempt. And again, like I said, 3218 is already passed. That in itself, making the wholesalers responsible for selling flavors, will reduce greatly what is sold in the state as far as a banned item. It's going to create a list. I was trying to find if that list is already available, but they've now come up with an actual list of items, because nobody ever knows. We've gone to these meetings here, we've gone to these meetings in other counties and cities, what the actual products are. Sometimes council members or non-smokers, I'm not a smoker, none of us are really in the room probably, but we still need to know what the products are. So 3218 outlines all of that, and it actually makes the law that's already in effect greater enforcement, all that stuff is coming out of that. So
Thank you,
you guys.
Mr. Matheru.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. The next speaker is, Bali D. No? There he is.
Good evening. Is it on? Good evening, everyone. I just want to get to the point. I think we're all pretty much on the same page with most of the stuff. The two problems are the transferability and the pack size. So I think for the transferability, I saw some options up there for to give the owners 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. I don't think that's really fair, because put it in your perspective. If you have a business and if you lose however many $100,000 value, if you don't sell it in a year or 2 year, you know, you're just telling all the businesses, sell your business in 2 years, sell it in 3 years, sell it in, because why wouldn't we? If we don't sell it in that time, then we lose all the value of the business. So the second part is the pack size. I think the pack size, for the pack sizes, it's basically banning all single cigars, because there's no 10-pack, so it's banning the 10-packs. So I think it should be 5. The limit should be for 5 for that. Allow the 5-pack, and because there's no 10-pack. So if somebody wants to buy a 5-pack, they should be able to buy it. Some people smoke medical marijuana, and they choose to smoke it. You know, that's their choice. So I think they should still have the opportunity to buy that product in Vallejo. And eventually, if we do a 10-pack, they're going to make 10-packs, and then it's going to lead to more people buying 10-packs and selling the single cigars. So those are the two main issues, and thank you guys.
Thank you. The next speaker is Antonio Preciado.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and Vice Mayor. My name is Antonio, and I'm a freshman at Griffin Technology Academy. Vallejo is my home. First, I want to thank you for the important work you do for our city. It is clear that you care about Vallejo, and I care too, and that's why I'm here tonight to take a step to protect us. I'm part of YTAPP team, an advocacy group focused on tobacco prevention, because I care deeply about my health, the health of my younger brothers and my friends and our community. Growing up in Vallejo, I've seen how vapes stores are popping up everywhere, and I also see many people, including kids, vaping. Somehow it's easy for kids to access tobacco products, especially flavored ones like candy flavored vapes. Flavors like grape, bubblegum, and gummy bears are designed to hook kids like me. Studies show that 4 out of 5 kids who use tobacco started with flavored products. The tobacco industry doesn't care about our health or our futures. They care about one thing: profit, profit, profit. At the expense of people like me, my peers, and my community. By passing the ordinance, we are taking a step to protect us and showing that Vallejo cares about its young. This ordinance will hold retailers accountable, reproduce access to these harmful products, and send a clear message that our city values health over profit. I care about this issue, and I believe you do too. Thank you for taking this step to protect Vallejo's young and our community a safer and healthier place.
Thank you, Antonio. Milena Rojas.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and community members. My name is Milena. I'm a freshman at Griffin Technologies Academy in Vallejo. I joined YTOP, which stands for Youth Tobacco Prevention Advocacy and Policy Project, because my health and others is really important to me. Thank you for all the hard work that you do for our city. Being a young person is already tough enough, but constantly being exposed to tobacco products makes it even harder. I often feel like my peers and I are being directly targeted. Every time I go to the restroom at school, I'm overwhelmed by the smell of tobacco and vapes. My school includes both middle and high school students. And I ask myself every day, why is this our reality? Why do my peers have such easy access to tobacco when we're still kids? This isn't just a convenience, it's dangerous. Tobacco and vaping are harming my generation, affecting our brain development, mental health, and physical well-being. Studies show they increase anxiety and make us more vulnerable to lifelong addiction. We're already dealing with so much, and this only is making it worse. I'm here to speak up because nothing is changing, nobody is being heard, and my peers and I deserve better. Please help us create a safer environment by passing policies that protect us from this harm. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
The next speaker is Andres Preciado.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and community members. My name is Andres Preciado. I am 13 years old, and I live and go to school here in Vallejo. I am very lucky because my parents are very present in my life and make it a priority to educate us. My mom is deeply involved in the community, and as a family, we dance in the ballet folklorico, which has been such a gift. It keeps us safe, helps us from building strong relationships, and strengthens our community. I feel bad for kids who don't have that. Many kids spend most of their time on social media, where there's constant exposure to vape. At my school, vaping is everywhere. Our city has so many vape shops and smoke shops that it feels impossible to escape. What about the kids whose parents work long hours and aren't able to monitor them as closely? They can end up turning to vaping or cigarettes. That's why I'm here tonight, because I care about those kids, and I want to see our city show that you care about us too. A tobacco retail license ordinance is a tool to protect youth. It can reduce access to harmful tobacco products like flavored vapes by holding retailers accountable when they sell to minors. It can also ensure that tobacco products aren't sold near schools, where we are most vulnerable. By passing the TRL, you can help create a safer, healthier community for all of us. Thank you for taking this step to show that you care about Vallejo's youth and our future.
The next speaker is Nefer Faris.
Let me take this out. Good evening, Mayor and council members and community members. My name is Nefer Farias. I'm a mother of teens and also a public health advocate. Since 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, I began coordinating YTOP, which is an advocacy and policy project focusing on tobacco prevention for youth. And what was my drive? My kids. I have teenagers, and I remember reading in 2019, the National Youth Tobacco Study that found over 5 million middle and high school students, and we're talking about 11 years old, 12 years old, were using e-cigarettes. And we know, unfortunately, that this number has terribly increased. So here in Vallejo, 8 school sites are located within 1,000 feet of a tobacco retailer, and 7 are within just 500 feet. So to have an idea, what is 1,000 feet, that is about 2 standard city blocks. A regular block is about 580 feet. So our kids are being exposed to these products on a daily basis. I remember one of my colleagues mentioning that his grandmother used to say that if you pass by a flower shop every day, you're probably gonna come out with the flower. So we need policies. We as parents are working really hard on educating our kids. I'm working really hard as a parent. I'm working really hard as an advocate. But we need policies to support us. And so we are here tonight to see and to ask you to do the part of work that can help the youth and can help us. Thank you.
The next speaker is Tracy Nashand.
Good evening, Mayor McConnell, Vice Mayor Laura Diaz, council members, community members, Tracy Nashand, Project Director of Solano Public Health Tobacco Prevention and Education Program. I would like to take this opportunity to recognize my Bureau Manager, Robin Cox, who is unavailable to be here tonight due to family matters. She is online, and the reason why I recognize her is because she is retiring on December 4th of this year. Robin has been with Solano County for over almost 35 years, and I've been fortunate to spend 30 of those years with her. Robin has dedicated her life and career to the pursuit of providing a healthier, more vibrant community for Solano County residents. She has worked with this council and previous councils on a variety of topics, not only here in Vallejo, but throughout Solano County and other jurisdictions, as well as the Board of Supervisors for Solano County as well. She is promoted a variety of programs, alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs, safe routes to school, fentanyl awareness, older adult fall prevention, and many, many more. In 1990, Robin established the Tobacco Prevention and Education Program in part with her efforts, advocacy, and dedication to science-based tobacco education. The California adult smoking rates has decreased from 23.7% in 1990 to 6.2% in 2021, a reduction of almost 74% over 3 decades of work. The tobacco industry realized that traditional smoking is and was on the decline, and they needed to attract new customers, so they transitioned to aerosolized electronic smoking devices known as vapes, with a variety of over 15,000 flavor options specifically targeted at youth. We as the community of advocates at Public Health, youth advocates, and other jurisdictions fought back to restrict the sales of vaping products and devices flavored as well with the SB 793. Once again, the tobacco industry is on the pivot to selling new products such as Zen, a nicotine salt-based packet that is used between the cheek and gums, much like traditional chewing tobacco. The tobacco industry will continue to change in their continuous pursuit of new customers. It is up to local communities and advocates to fight for those who have no voice or their voice is not heard. Much of this work has also contributed to the collaboration of retailers to make sure they are complying with local laws. As many of the retailers here tonight and in the past have stated, they don't sell illegal products, they don't sell to minors. There are other retailers in Vallejo who are not here tonight who might not be committed to that agreement and to this type of ordinance. A TRO holds all retailers to the same level of standard and will help provide the protections of youth and also of the other retailers. As my father would say, this makes good business sense. And to address the Assembly Bill 3218 that was mentioned earlier, this is covered by the state. It is a law that will go into effect in January. But this law actually will be covered by individuals at the state level. So imagine Vallejo has a challenge of 100 stores. Imagine the state has over thousands of stores. To comply and go and check those stores is almost impossible.
Time.
They only do a small percentage. Thank you for your time.
The next speaker, Jimmy Ansira.
Good evening, Council. Jimmy with LGBTQ Tobacco. Tonight, I want to celebrate a significant milestone in Vallejo. After months of discussion and collaboration, we finally now have a tobacco retail license ordinance shaped by the community input. While we may not agree on every detail, I believe we share a common goal: to protect the most vulnerable communities from the predatory practices of big tobacco, and one of those communities specifically being the LGBTQ community. Our project exists because we know the LGBTQ community smokes at disproportionately higher rates. This isn't random. This is the direct result of systemic discrimination, targeted marketing, and stressors unique to our lived experiences. I don't speak for the entire LGBTQ community, but I do think it's safe to say that in the wake of the most recent disheartening election results, our community feels more stressed and uncertain more than ever. With an administration that has repeatedly devalued our safety and rights, we're bracing for the impact of policies that could further marginalize us. The heightened stress increased the risk of community turning to nicotine as a coping mechanism, something we cannot afford to ignore. Even more concerning, Vallejo's youth are increasingly accessing tobacco products at a time when statewide trends show a decrease. According to the California Healthy Kids Survey, lesbian, gay, and bisexual students in Vallejo City Unified School District are nearly twice as likely than their peers to use e-cigarettes. Cigarillos, another deadly product, are the second most popular tobacco product among California youth. These products are used disproportionately high rates by the LGBTQ youth. Lesbian, gay, and bisexual youth use cigarillos at twice the rate of their straight peers, and transgender youth in California use them over 3 times as much as their non-transgender peers. This is not a public health issue. It's a matter of equity and justice, and adopting a strong TRL ordinance is a step forward towards protecting the LGBTQ youth and ensuring they have the opportunity to grow up in a healthier and safer Vallejo. Thank you.
Amaya Wooding.
Hi again. Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. Amaya Wooding. You may have heard that our nation's Surgeon General recently released another report, which is called Eliminating Tobacco-Related Disease and Death, Addressing Disparities. It's over 800 pages long, so light reading, but the executive summary was much more manageable. And one of the conclusions of Chapter 5 is that, quote, communities with high concentrations of people from diverse racial and ethnic population groups, residents with lower income, and adolescents tend to have greater availability of cheaper tobacco products, end quote, which, as you can tell by me tripping over it, is a lot of words, for what we already know is true about tobacco in Vallejo. We've previously shared data that we collected from a sample of Vallejo stores at the beginning of last year. You may recall we found cigarillos in small pack sizes available for just $1 or $2. We've shown you maps of how there are more tobacco retailers in certain parts of town. Plotting the location of stores that sell tobacco on a map aligns pretty compellingly with areas that have lower median income. And we've shared data about illegal sales of tobacco by Vallejo tobacco retailers to youth, which the State Department of Justice tells us has been as high as 45% in the last few years. And we've also shared how state enforcement is really sparse in a way that can be addressed through local programs, as over 200 California jurisdictions already do. So we know what issues this ordinance, including its components around distance, density, and transferability, as well as the DOJ funds that were addressed on a consent calendar earlier this evening, seek to address. There were council comments in June about how, we're 90% of the way there, so, we're really hoping that we're closer now. I don't know, can we say 99? So I look forward to hearing your comments tonight and look forward to assisting as this policy moves forward. Thank you.
Paul Hayer.
Good evening, Council. So, we mentioned this before. Us retailers, we are for the TRL. We are with you. We don't want children smoking. We don't want to sell to children. But it is a legal product, right? It's state, it's legal. Federally, it's legal. It's monitored by the state and at the federal level. And so we are with you guys, but we also need to protect our business to a certain point. I think most of our retailers are a little confused about the arm's length transfer. Can we get some clarity on that?
Well, now's not a time for dialogue, so let's hear what you have to say.
No, it's kind of confusing as to, well, I can only sell to my family? Is that what it is? No? Okay. Sure. But then, can we ask a question regarding it before you guys take it to?
This is the opportunity for public comment. Council members will ask the attorney for clarification, but this is not a time for you to get into a dialogue with anybody on the dais.
Yeah, I just wanted to find out.
Through the mayor, if I may. Mr. Hayer, that is one of the questions that one of us is for sure going to bring up, because it's very important that not only you, all of you, but us also understand. So we will be bringing it up so that Veronica has another opportunity to explain it to a point where it's understandable.
Yeah, also, be mindful of the penalties, to what extent they're going to be. The transfer of the license, not transfer of the license, sorry. For us to be able to apply, what are the guidelines for us to be able to get a license at this point, if this TRL is going to, once it passes, right? Then the 60 days, what if there's an earthquake? What if there's a fire? What if, you're remodeling? Will you lose your license? So these are some of our concerns. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
The next speaker, Dave H.
Thank you for giving me the time. The TRL I actually think is late. It's very late. It should have been done a long time ago. And I think the community, the city fell short. And what that created was a proliferation of many tobacco retailers all over the city. So as a business owner here, I've been a resident here in Vallejo for 9 years. I still have a lot of, I'm here a lot, and I care that we don't have this proliferation of tobacco retailers everywhere. We're completely with you on that. We're also completely with you on the youth component of this. There's one common thread between those that have been involved here and those that haven't. Every single retailer that's in this room today, that was here the last 3-4 meetings, that was in the breakout sessions, they've all have had an established business for more than 10 years, all of them. Some of them 20, some of them 30. Guess who's not there? Everybody that's opened up in the last 5 years. They don't care. They're not here. They're not engaged, because they actually, it's easy for them to open as a smoke shop. It doesn't cost much money. They can open up anywhere at any time. It's very cheap. They don't have to get a license. There's no TRL, none of it. And that is the unfortunate part, because you're taking businesses now, when it comes to a new license and being sold, the ones that care, that have been there for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. There's a store that's next to a cannabis club, but guess what? That cannabis club opened up a year and a half ago. But that store that's next door has been there like 50 years. So now all of a sudden, if they sell, they're not allowed to have a new tobacco license because cannabis opened up a year ago next to them. And so I think this is a problem. I would recommend the council looks more at the penalty aspect of it and who are the bad actors, and start closing those guys down, as opposed to just across the board, everybody's on the same playing field, because they're not. The ones that opened up 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, that have put sweat equity, that show up here and that care, aren't on the same, they're not on the same level. I can tell you that these folks here follow the rules. They actually look at what they can and can't sell. Some of these others, I can't say that. I don't know what they're doing. They're probably doing all sorts of things out there, and those are the ones that we really need to go after, because that's how it's ending up in the schools. There's 2 ways it ends up in youth's hands. One is the bad actors, and 2 is those that are buying for the youth that go into a store that legally sells it. And I'm glad that we've received the city's received the grant. Hopefully the enforcement tackles more of that. But I would strongly please encourage you to not penalize those that want to sell. So what I'm asking for is that we do not put a time limit on the long-term existing retailers that have been there 30, 40 years. No time limit at all, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next
Thank
speaker,
you.
please.
The next speaker is Sim S. Sim S. Sim. All it has is SIM and then S. What, the next name would be Ruby Garcia, so maybe that's you then. Come on down. And Ruby's the first name.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I've been living in Vallejo more than 50 years. And I'm a business owner since 1986. I see a lot of changes. What I want to say is, it starts at home, school, society. We have to teach our youth. I have 3 kids. All those business people, they got their kids. Some kids are small. We all want everybody clean society. The youth shouldn't smoke. They shouldn't drink. They should be very punctual, very intellectual, have good work. But we are the easy target. Always try to make, there's a lot of condition on the license, on the ABC license, tobacco license. It's very strict. We are 100%, more than 100% with our society, with our council member, with our community to stop the youth smoking. So what it is, like my nephew told you, he said that too, but see, a lot of time, some bad people from our society, they will come to your business and they will buy something. You don't know what they're going to do. And they go to the school, they go somewhere else, and they give them the product to them. And we are the one who get the blame for. That's not fair. We're not going with them. We don't know what they're going to do with it. So we have a couple concerns. Please, be fair, be honest. Think about the small business people. We are one of you. We are not, we work, we pay taxes, everything. So think about the transferability. Everybody should be able to transfer their license whenever they want to retire. Like I am 73 years old. I want to retire. So if I want to retire, I should be able to sell my business without getting any problem. If I did some violation, I made a lot of violation, all this, punish me. Same thing on the penalty. If it should be only a 1 year, 3 violation. If somebody make a mistake, he did a violation, give him a punishment. Second time, big punishment. Third time, revoke him. So it has to be a little line. We are 100% with you. Please, whenever you want to do something, think about it and do the proper thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
The last in-person speaker is Ruby Garcia. And I apologize for mispronouncing names, but sometimes what comes up here is not the full name.
Okay. Good evening, all the members of the council. My name is Ruby Garcia. I am a Vallejo resident, and I am a freshman high school student. I am part of the YTAPP team, an advocacy team project here in Vallejo because I want to make a difference in my community. I would like to thank you for the work you are doing for our city, but tonight I want to talk about something I see in school. A lot of kids vape. That it may be common knowledge. It doesn't make it right, but it is. It's so sad to see younger kids, some as young as 11 years old, already vaping. A few days ago, I saw a girl who couldn't be older than 10 vaping a strawberry mango flavor as if it was completely normal. It broke my heart because I have learned how damaging vaping and tobacco are for our health. As I talked to some adults in my life who are addicted to tobacco, I discovered that many started when they were kids, many as a joke, with candy-shaped cigarettes and pencils pretending to be cigars. Tobacco industry doesn't care what happens to these kids as long as they make money. They are targeting us with flavors and marketing that makes these harmful products look fun and harmless. I have more information about the topic since I have lived firsthand how dangerous tobacco can be for the people to the point it takes their lives. But many kids do not have this information. Tonight, I hope you can approve something that will help. I hope you care enough to make Vallejo a safer place for kids. We need more education, but also we need policies and protections. A tobacco retail license ordinance can help hold businesses accountable when they sell products to minors. Some of these minors aren't being carded. I have heard this firsthand. This is not only an addiction. Tobacco is a slow and painful death. Please help us protect. Please help protect us. We deserve to live in a healthier community. Thank you.
Thank you, too.
That is the last speaker, Mayor.
All right, how many virtual speakers do we have?
Thank you, Mayor. We currently have 7 virtual speakers.
All right, we'll take the 7. Go ahead.
Harkarit Singh, go ahead.
Hello, council members. This is Harkirat. I'm a local business owner in Vallejo, and I totally disagree what this ordinance is coming. It hurts the city a lot because if there's no business in the city, there's no taxes, no development in the city. So it hurting us with this ordinance will hurt the city and will hurt the development in the city. Also, with the thing of packs, the 10 packs, for example, if a person just wants to smoke pack a day or 2 cigarettes a day from a pack, you are making him buy a whole carton, which is like 10 packs, spending like $120 with in this tough economy where it's hard to survive. You're making him, you know, smoke more, and it can indirectly maybe have more crimes because he has to smoke. He will try to, steal or something. It so city name comes bad on that. And last, with the transfer, I heard city saying that we can transfer the business to the family member if you want to retire, but not to the other person. What if the family member, the kid, doesn't want to run the business? Where will I go if I want to sell my business tomorrow? I want to retire. So instead of this ordinance should be easy. Have a freedom to sell the business to anyone who passes all the channels, because there's a federal law, there's a state law, and now the city law. I think the more important is federal law. We are good citizens. We follow federal law. We follow state laws. We we have ABC coming at our businesses, we, checking on us, and we have passed that. So why we have to deal another law on law and law? So instead of running a good business, I think we have to spend more time on these laws which harms my business. So I would consider that. I request you guys to stop this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker, please.
Next speaker, Tara Lay, go ahead.
Yes, thank you.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council. You know, it's interesting tonight. I heard a plea for support from the youth, from nonprofits, advocacy partners urging the city to take action. My name is Tara Lee Martin. I'm here with my fellow colleagues from LGBT minus tobacco, professionals, coalitions, survivors of big tobacco, and all these youth here tonight that are fighting for justice. As we have all seen, there's detriments to long-term use of big tobacco, the marketing to children, such as myself, as I was addicted at 14 years old and addicted for nearly 15 years. What I heard from one of our youth that stuck to me tonight was this mention of health over profit. And I think that if we do not move forward in providing a strict term limiting transferability, tobacco sales to youth will continue. And tonight, you have an opportunity to be fair, but also take a stance and make a significant impact on this epidemic. With now over $900,000 in grant funding to support this initiative, congratulations, by the way, I urge you to move forward with this TRL tonight and not push it for another month. I also ask you to be fair, but also be impactful. And sometimes that means making tough decisions. I look forward to the next generation that can be proud of the decisions that this council will make tonight by choosing their health over profit. I also just want to support the minimum pack price for tobacco, and somebody else had mentioned that that people that use marijuana would need these, you know, five pack, and they'd have to buy 10-pack. Well, it's so good that marijuana dispensaries sell those wraps, so you know we don't even need to sell those because they're also flavored and illegal products. What I want to leave you with is no on transferability, making really strict, hard decisions, a minimum price, 3 violations in 1 year, or lose their TRL license. It's really just holding accountable the current active tobacco stores in Vallejo that are currently selling illegal products. We don't think it's happening, but it's happening. Like I mentioned last time, that there are QR codes underneath mats that their regulars go in and they can buy any kind of vape, any kind of flavored tobacco. And it's happening right here. It could be somebody in this room. We all like to think that we're all, you know, not doing those things. But I've heard so many youth tonight come up and talk about 11-year-olds smoking and talk about they can't even go to school or go to the bathroom. Like we can't just think that this profit, this needing to retire and give our kids this opportunity.
Time.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker, please.
Bob Gordon, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, council members. My name is Bob Gordon. I'm a member of Tobacco Free Solano Coalition. Also, cigarettes and pharmacies don't mix. And referring to a previous speaker, unfortunately, some retailers have not been following the law, and there must be strong consequences for those who don't follow the law. We all heard the young people speak again tonight, pleading with the council to finally take action to protect their health with this policy. I'd like to call your attention to the tobacco-free pharmacy provision of the proposed ordinance. Vallejo can join 63 other jurisdictions in California that have already ended the sale of every tobacco product in every pharmacy, including Benicia, which ended the sales of tobacco in every Benicia pharmacy in 2019. By inserting simple language into that tobacco retailer license, the council would end the sale in the 4 chains that continue to sell tobacco products, those being Rite Aid, the Walgreens on Springs Road, and both Safeway stores. Council members do have the power to change what a pharmacy is for a whole generation of young people. Pharmacy is a place to get better, not to get cancer or heart disease or lung disease. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Calvin H. Go ahead.
Calvin, are you there?
Calvin, please unmute yourself.
You know, I hate this system. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council members. I've been intrigued listening to the dialogue and the back and forth, and I've identified a couple of things that I find are very interesting. One is that this particular matter seems to be being brought forth and pushed by a singular demographic, uh, uh, strongly pushed forward by a singular demographic. We talk about special interest in Vallejo, and boy, is that not a special interest. We need to look at that as a part of it. I'm going to pose a question. I realize you can't answer it as council members, but why wasn't the TRL brought to the Economic Development Commission? I'm a member of that commission. We didn't have any knowledge of it. It was not brought forth to us for any type of recommendation, understanding, vetting, or otherwise at all. So what is the purpose of an Economic Development Commission when the understood purpose is to deal with economic development? How do we support businesses? How do we promote businesses? How do we draw businesses in? The more we start to legislate matters of this nature, opposed to educating the particular victims, if we want to call them that, as opposed to educating the victims and teaching them that this is not something that's in their best interest, we're driving business away because nobody wants to operate in an environment that's not, shall we say, business friendly. When it comes to the transfer to a child of a business at any time of the value of an estate is diminished by government action of this nature, I don't find that to be reasonable in any way. The responsibility of educating a child goes to the parents first. I raised 3 children, not a single one of them smoked tobacco products. And I don't smoke tobacco products, and I never have. It's a personal choice. And isn't there a personal responsibility in the choices that we make? For some reason, we live in a world that somebody else has to make choices about how we choose to live. If we choose to drive a car fast and have an accident at the corner of Amador and Georgia Street, do we run out and say we should ban cars? We should no longer have cars? People can't sell their car to someone else because they might drive it fast also? We wouldn't dream of that sort of thing. So I'm troubled by that thing. I believe the county should be a part of the education process. I don't see any posters at any schools that speak to the negative impacts of smoking. So if we're not educating the children that you want to protect by way of such activity, simple activity, what are we doing here creating legislation?
Time.
Thank you, Mr. Harrell. The next speaker, please.
Camille Cummings, go ahead.
Hi, good evening, Council. Camille Cummings with the African American Tobacco Control Leadership Council, and I suppose I'm one of the special interest groups that Mr. Harrell suggested is taking over this ordinance. But we advocate for the Black community and all communities of color who have been left out of life-saving public health legislation. The duty of our organization and LGBTQ minus tobacco and all of the coalition members that are here today to support this ordinance is to truly protect the public's health. And that's what this ordinance does. The commercial tobacco industry has predatorily marketed deadly tobacco products, specifically mentholated tobacco products, to Black communities and other vulnerable populations for decades. It is not a personal choice if these products are predatorily marketed to you. There was somebody that mentioned, you walk past a flower shop so many times, one of those days you're going to buy a flower. So when you have an influx in tobacco retailers and the greater commercial tobacco industry that is predatorily marketing to specific groups, it is our duty as a community to protect, those people that are being that are vulnerable. 45,000 Black lives are lost each year, specifically due to the predatory marketing practices that the tobacco industry uses, specifically marketing mentholated tobacco products. Amai Wooding of LGBTQ minus tobacco mentioned that today the U.S. Surgeon General, did release a report highlighting the negative impacts of commercial tobacco, specifically menthol and other flavored tobacco products. So congratulations to the council, or to the city rather, for receiving this wonderful opportunity to for enforcement, and I truly encourage you to take advantage of that and enforce the state law. So in closing, my organization, the African American Tobacco Control Leadership Council, is really calling on you to put the health and well-being of Vallejo residents, especially our youth, who are the most vulnerable, at the forefront of your thoughts, and not the profits of the tobacco industry, by enforcing the state law. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Blythe Young. Go ahead.
Good evening, Council. My name is Blythe Young. I'm the Community Advocacy Director for the American Heart Association, and I'm here tonight to ask you to consider two pieces of the policy that you're moving forward. But overall, I think I want to touch on that retailers have expressed that they want to be inspected. I think that's the piece of alignment that we have between public health and the retail side of things, that everyone wants to be sure that we are inspecting and doing regular compliance checks to remove bad actors from the city of Vallejo. I know there has been resistance to codifying a check within your tobacco retail license. This is disappointing, as we have provided City Attorney Nebb and council members with the legal guidance from the Public Health Law Center, who is the model policy provider and legal TA provider for the state of California, that there is no risk to codifying at least one check within your TRL, and it actually puts you at a safer place because it's a best practice to list what you will be spending the fee on that you're charging retailers. I ask you to consider tonight a non-substantive change to codify a compliance check so that you can actually move through your enforcement structure. There's a lot of discussion this evening about finding bad actors, about having meaningful penalties within a business license to sell tobacco, but I'm unclear how you will move forward through your penalty structure if you aren't actually going out to inspect. While I am pleased that you have received the DOJ funds, that's a great step forward. I urge you to set your fee that would to cover the cost of your compliance and administration of the license in full, including compliance inspections. DOJ funds and activities are not intended to replace and supplant your total fee and your total compliance activities within your TRL. I ask you to consider these changes and move this policy forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, please.
Second to last speaker is Milo. Please unmute yourself. Go ahead. Milo, if you're still there, please unmute yourself. Go ahead. Moving on. Kaylin Kelly, please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Yes, hello, City Council. Good evening. Once again, I just wanted to thank everyone for coming to the table to address this issue, because at least in the lease scenario, everyone has had the opportunity to have a robust discussion. I just wanted to be sure that everyone is aware that although the Economic Development Commission is a vital part of the city and it serves a great purpose within the city, the mission is to expand the city's tax base. It's not to address equity and governance as it pertains to a public health crisis that is ravaging the city's most vulnerable populations. In fact, the argument could be made that as long as the crisis had a tax base, the Economic Commission would have a staked interest in making sure that it wasn't addressed. And so there has to be a balance with health equity, and there has to be a balance with economic interest. And that's what we're here to do. I don't think that there's a specified interest outside of the public interest that is being illustrated here. The public is interested in the well-being of its residents. The public is interested in the well-being of the city. The public is interested in the well-being of those youth that are speaking tonight. So if by a specialized interest group we are talking about the public, then indeed you are correct. Uh, Once again, my hat off to the city council. Thank you for engaging this robust um, uh, discussion. Please make the right decision and continue to keep this tobacco retail license on the table and indeed pass it when the time is appropriate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, too. Did we find Milo or not?
One more time, Milo, if you wanted to speak, please go ahead and unmute yourself. Going once. Going twice. And that does it for speakers on this item, Mayor.
Okay, I'll close the public speaking on this, return it to the council. Ms. Nebb, there were some inquiries made about clarity in the ordinance. I saw you taking good notes, so if you could respond to those.
I will certainly try. So I think that in an effort to make it less confusing, people didn't quite follow. So I'm going to use, rather than the words of the ordinance, examples. If you are a current tobacco retail seller, you are currently selling tobacco products legally within the city, and when I say legally, meaning with all permits that were required to be had when you established, you may come in and receive a license personal unto you, regardless of whether the location you are at complies with the separation requirements and regardless of how many retail licenses are to be issued. Under this ordinance, with the clarifications proposed, if you wish to retire or go out of business or unfortunately maybe die or become disabled, you may transfer that business for less than fair market value. That doesn't mean zero, just means less than fair market value, to a relative, as I listed all of those relatives. The council will be discussing tonight another potential exemption for those transfers, if you will, relating to could you transfer to a, I'm going to call it a stranger, obviously it could be a friend, but a non-family member, and retain your location for some number of years, whatever those are, 5 years, 10 years, something else the council describes, or if the council will consider removing that restriction of transferability after those number of years of the location. So that's something the council's going to talk about this evening, and you'll hear where they land with that. Those were the changes that were made to that transferability, those options, and then clarifying a family member transfer doesn't count. You can do that forever, as this ordinance is currently written, with the change to the descriptor. Actually, it always said that, but it was made clear in the change to the descriptor that a less than fair market value transfer to a family member doesn't count. That family member can come in and get a new license for the location where your business is currently located. So that's the clarity I think that people were looking for relative to this issue of what are these changes saying. The other thing that the changes are saying, and we will be talking about this choice too, are if you are a violator, okay, you get caught violating X number of times, council's going to talk about that, within X period. And when I say X period, I mean once in 1 year, in 2 years, in 5 years. The council will make that decision, but if a current holder of a permit is caught violating that number of times, their transferability to a stranger goes away. And I say transferability of that location that does not comply. In other words, even if your license isn't taken away, you still would lose the ability to sell to a stranger by violating. Those are the provisions of the ordinance that we have added based on the council's direction at your previous meeting, and decisions will be, hopefully, made this evening on which choices the council wants to make among those options. We'll walk through them very carefully.
All right, thank you so much. We'll
Yes.
Take questions and comments from council members. Vice Mayor?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. You know, this has been a long process, And I want to take the time to thank everyone that's here, everyone that's participated in the workshops, in the long meetings on both sides. You know, it's been a very long time coming. I'm in favor of an ordinance that protects our children, but I'm also in favor of an ordinance that is fair to business owners, specifically business owners like the gentleman that came up that's been around for 40 years and 30 years, and I've been in this city 40 years, so I know a lot of these businesses that have been there. Now, I'll give you an example. When people talk about transferability of a year and 5 years, you're basically forcing a business owner to have to sell their business or retire prior to when they're ready. And I'll give you a very, very simple example. My colleague here, Rosanna, and myself, we both worked at the county, at different counties. I retired at the age of 50 after putting in 28 years of employment in Contra Costa County. Rosanna worked at Solano County and retired this year? Last year. Okay. Were you 50 or were you over 50? Over. Okay, she was over 50. So would it have been fair for the PERS, because we both get a PERS retirement, Public Employee Retirement System, to come in and tell us, you have to retire at 50 or you're not going to get your retirement? I was ready and I left. She wasn't ready and she stayed. So that basically is what happens when you say you have to sell within 5 years. You have to sell if you want to be able to sell and transfer it to the next business owner, you know, person that's not related. You have to do this within this period of time, and that's not right. You have these folks who have put in the time, the hours, the livelihood into these businesses. And contrary to the large tobacco industry, a lot of these folks are small business owners that sometimes have their own family members helping them there, and sometimes they will put in 12, 16 hours a day because they don't have the money to be able to pay employees. So that in itself, to me, is an issue. The way this ordinance was handled from the beginning was wrong. It was very wrong. And I said it before, and I'm going to say it again because there's folks here that have not heard this before. I'm an immigrant from Mexico. I came here without speaking the language. A lot of these business owners for the tobacco industry are immigrants from India and from other countries. From the beginning that this was brought forward, there was no communication to them whatsoever in Punjabi or whatever other languages they speak, Farsi, whatever other languages they speak. That is wrong also. You can't be in this room deciding people's lives and have them not even know and understand what is going on. That was one of the problems that I saw. Since then, we've had meetings, and at my request and at the request of others, we have had translation services like we do today. A lot of them have headsets on because we are deciding their lives. We are deciding the livelihood. We are deciding what they bring home to their families, how they support their families. A lot of them came and brought their own money from their countries and invested in a business that is legal. Whether we like it or not, it is legal to sell tobacco in the United States. Morally, we can talk about that in a second, but legally, they can sell tobacco. So they invested their money in this business that generates revenue for the city, that feeds their family, and also within their stores, if you patronize some of their stores, you will find fruit, you will find other things, because it's not just tobacco and alcohol. There's a lot of things that they provide in specifically food desert areas, such as South Vallejo and North Vallejo, where we don't have any big markets like Safeway and the others, because those two areas have been deserts for food deserts for the longest time. So they provide that. In reality, our city too needs to accept responsibility, because we allowed 100 licenses to go out to a lot of these folks. And whether it was before my time or now, or we're still continuing, I don't know, but we allowed 100 licenses, and now we want to say that we want to eliminate half, if not more, of them. Why did we give those licenses out? Only to take them back now. You know, that doesn't seem fair, because they've invested, they've bought buildings, and that's another thing too. A lot of these folks own the buildings that they work in. So how does that work when you go to transfer a license, or the transferability of the location, and you are the building owner? This ordinance has to be done in a way that holds the business owners accountable. all the people that are selling to kids or selling products that they're not selling, we need to make sure that they're out of business. Those have to be the ones that have to be gone. But you can't paint a group of people with the same paintbrush. And I take offense at that because, there were remarks made at the presidential, candidate, what have you, that we, my people, Mexicans and Latinos, we're all X, Y, and Z, and we are not. I give. My family has never taken. So I have a hard time painting people with the same brush. Now, we received a grant for almost $1 million. Let's use that grant for enforcement. When you start using that grant for enforcement, along with education, because those are the two key components that are going to put the bad players out of business and bring our numbers down, for these tobacco businesses, bring it down to the level that we want. 1 per every 2,500 people, I believe is what it is. But you have to partner with the school district, you have to partner with nonprofits, and you have to educate the parents. Because it's common sense to tell your child to not smoke. I have 3 adult children in their 30s. 1 smokes, off and on. Can I tell him not to smoke? I've tried. He's my son. And believe me, I'm tough. As little as you see me, and they're big boys, I tell them not to do certain things, but in reality, they were raised in the same manner, in the same house. They had participating parents that went to school, went to PTAs. We did everything, sports, you name it. But one of them chose to smoke. I don't take it as my fault, but we have to learn to teach the parents to participate a little bit more. My background is in social service, and we have a huge problem of disconnected parents to children, not just in this sense, but the drugs, the gangs, the everything that's out there. This is beyond tobacco. This is beyond a kid could go in there and get tobacco. When I asked my son where he got his tobacco the first time, believe it or not, he was in middle school. He was 13. And it was the friend at school, older brother that was in high school. That's how it filtered down to him. He didn't go into a store and buy it. So I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying there's different reasons that people do what they do. Education is key. The transferability of a business needs to be addressed without jeopardizing the well-being of the business owner. So I am in favor of passing this TRL, putting it in place, making sure that the education is done, but I'm not in favor of putting a cap on the years that the people have in order to sell their business. I'm not in favor. I don't think it's the right thing to do. And others will have an opportunity to agree with me, disagree with me on that. I agree that the ordinance, with one exception, allow the purchaser to remain exempt from the location, separation, and density requirements, as is stated in the ordinance. I also, let me see, I kind of jumped back and forth. Passing the TRL is necessary. However, like I said, we need to put policies in place that protect our children and allow business owners to continue to support their families. Because we just look at it as, yes, there is a health issue in trying to protect the kids. But if we're all about kids, then let's protect the kids that are the kids, the sons and the daughters of these people that have these businesses, because those kids have rights too. Now, we received almost $1 million, like I said. Let's utilize that money, let's brainstorm, let's work together, with all the groups that want to have this TRL passed. I am willing to sit down with any and all of you so that we can put something in place before I leave. I only have a month and a half left, and then there you'll have a new council up here who will be implementing these sanctions, these penalties, and that's another thing. The penalty I would like to see in a 1-year time frame for these penalties to take place, not the 5 years. And I will stop now, let others speak, and then perhaps come back with more information after if I need to. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember Verda Halika, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question before I say my, speak. Question for Veronica. The new state law that was mentioned earlier, how does that impact our ordinance? Is that going to strengthen it or help us or what?
I'm not sure that I think it has a whole lot of effect. All it's in doing is, as I understand it, is increasing penalties for violation of the state law at the state level. So I think as was mentioned, you know, the state does do some enforcement. It does some inspections, it does some decoy operations. It's limited. I think the issue and why it's limited is, you know, if you multiply, think about the state, the size of the state's budget, all the things that we're talking about here at this level, and multiply it by, you know, thousands upon thousands of potential tobacco retailers statewide. It's just we all know, I think, that enforcement, service delivery, all of the things that we need to do as a municipality for all of the reasons that you adopt ordinances, regulations, policies, et cetera. The closer you are to the local level in the delivery of those items, the more effective it generally speaking is. And I'm not saying local government should take over all of the things that the state's doing, but I am saying that we, as a municipality, don't control what the state does. We don't control whether it enforces or doesn't enforce. We don't control how it addresses its licensing scheme and its regulatory scheme. We control what we do.
Okay, so we have local control. The other question is, does the 1,000, no, not 1,000, 100 plus retailers, does that include the smoke shops?
In theory, again,
the only reason I asked that, and you don't have
so
to,
yes is the answer. Anybody who sells tobacco products.
Okay, so they will also have to apply for the retail license, et cetera, and will be subject to all the
pharmacies
sections. And pharmacies
are completely banned in this ordinance immediately upon its effective date.
Okay, so just a clarification, and thank you for providing the clarification. I wanted to make sure that Mr. Paul Hayer was clear on that. So currently, I'm just, you know, for my own purpose, currently a seller, which you just stated, regardless of location, and if he or she dies, can transfer the business or sell the business to the family member. Do they have?
Well, I need to clarify what you mean by currently.
Say again?
Okay, so I need a little bit of clarification of your question. What do you mean by currently? Currently as the ordinance is proposed, or currently today?
Currently, well, if we pass the ordinance, so
if we pass the ordinance with the amendments that we are proposing here, for clarity purposes, a tobacco retailer may transfer for less than fair market value to any of the listed family members forever.
So give me a number. For example, $1 million, or I don't know how much those are worth.
Don't care. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how much they sell. Doesn't matter what the value of the business is.
Say they sell it to their
nephew,
son, who may not
cousin.
want to run the business.
Who may what? Who may want to run the business?
Who may not want to run the business.
Well, if he doesn't want to run the business, then transferring it to him is not going to be much help.
Exactly. Okay. So if they sell, okay, I'm just trying to.
If they sell to a stranger.
A stranger.
And I say a stranger, but someone who is not one of the listed family members, then depending on what the council does tonight, it would not be transferable either after a certain period of time or at all, depending on what you do, unless you amend the provisions of this ordinance.
Okay, what is not transferable? The exemption, for instance?
The exemption is not transferable, which means that location, let's be clear about what that means.
If it's within, if it's less than 1,000 feet from a school or a youth center.
Doesn't matter, because it's over the numerosity problem, right? We have too many. The right to sell tobacco products is lost completely.
If you sell to a stranger.
Correct.
So it doesn't matter
unless you adopt an exemption for this, as this ordinance is originally proposed. You have exemptions in front of you tonight. As originally proposed,
Yeah, because,
So-
you know, I
so
thought
it
that
is
we
true.
were
I'm
gonna do
sorry.
the exemption thing.
There is no, it doesn't matter whether they're legal or not, or whether they're 1,000 feet away or not. As written, the ordinance says if you, at this location, try to sell, you're over the numbers, you can't,
To a stranger.
to a stranger,
But
correct?
if you transfer it or sell it to your family member that's within the list, you're
You
okay.
can,
You
correct.
can. The exemption is there. They can apply.
Correct.
Okay. And just for clarification, each time there's a transfer, well, all the owners will have to renew every year anyway, right? So if
Correct.
they transfer it to their family member,
He can renew,
that family member, the tobacco license is not transferable.
correct,
Okay, regardless.
regardless.
Okay, so your family member, nephew or niece, brother-in-law, will have to apply for the license, but he is exempt from that location exemption.
Correct again,
Okay, okay. It's only when you sell to a stranger.
yes.
Okay, all right. So I wanted to just ask, you know, them if that was, were they clear on that? Is that what your understanding is? If I would like, can I just ask Mr. Paul and David, are you clear on that explanation, or was that something that you are not clear on? And if I can just ask, because, Mr. Paul.
I'm clear on that part. It's just our main concern is like, I pass away, my son is there, he doesn't want to run.
Wait a minute,
Okay.
wait a minute. Unless
Yeah,
we're
can
not
you-
getting in a dialogue with the audience. If you
Yeah,
have something to say,
just
please
yes or
come
no.
to
Can
the
you come
speaker's
up
podium.
to the podium, Paul?
And please, council members, please refrain from asking members of the audience
Okay.
a question directly. If you want to ask them, have them come up to the podium.
Yes,
so
thank you,
people at
Mr.
home can
Mayor.
hear as well.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry for the, please, Mr. Paul.
So, question is, I pass away, my son takes over, and he doesn't want to run the business. Will he be able to sell the business according to
To a
what's
stranger,
proposed?
no.
To a stranger.
So here, the answer is to a stranger and retain the exemption for
Okay.
location, no. But he could sell to one of his
Cousins?
relatives, cousins, et cetera.
So our request is that, we be able to transfer indefinitely if we're compliant. That's our request.
I think we understand that.
Thank you.
Okay, good, thank you. Okay. So if we eliminate the number of years for transferability, what is the impact of that? It's just forever and ever?
So if you were to eliminate, let's be clear about it, let's be really clear about it.
Because
If
that's
you
what
were to eliminate the provisions on page 10 under section 510050H3, and you were to eliminate section A, which was what was just suggested by the vice mayor, the limits on transferring a business to a stranger, keep going business, not the license, remember, but the business to a stranger, the exemption for existing businesses today, transferring, would remain indefinitely if you eliminate subsection 3A. Now, B and C would remain presumptively. B says they can't move their location, they have to stay at that location. And C says that where the location holder or the license holder, so where that location or the person who holds the license for that location violates more than 2 times within, you pick 1 year, 2 years, whatever number of years, that ability to transfer to a stranger is lost.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
My recommendation on the number of years is 2 years for the violation. Wasn't that your recommendation? Yours is 1. Yeah, mine would be 2 years, because initially it was 5, and I think that that's not reasonable. So mine would be 2 years. Guidelines, smoke shops. Okay.
Through the mayor, can I address something that is related to this before you
Yeah,
continue
go
with the
ahead.
rest of the council
Wait a
members?
minute. She still has the floor, so let her finish.
Okay.
I will defer to Vice Mayor because it's related to my
Okay,
question.
have you finished your
Yes,
your
I am
discussion?
finished.
Okay.
Yes, thank
Chair,
you.
Chair recognizes Councilmember Bergenser, who's next in line, followed by Vice Mayor. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Getting almost $1 million from the state shows the state's commitment to enforcing this and how important this is to the lawmakers in Sacramento, and I agree with them. I'm very thankful that we received that money. My first question I have is the extended time period that you talked about on the last slide, the 90 days to 180 days for the staff. Does that mean that the businesses have 180 days to fill out an application and submit it, or
No. They have 90 days to fill
They
out
still
the
have 90
application.
days,
They
but
still
the
have 90,
staff-
but the
your
staff has
staff
more
have-
time
okay,
to
thank
issue it,
you.
yeah.
Thank you for that. I also agree that for the penalties, 2 years seems very reasonable to me. I do, just as a point of clarification to the Vice Mayor, the city never provided tobacco licensing to any businesses. That's why we're in this mess and why we're putting this forward. So it's not that we handed them out willy-nilly and now are accountable for them. We never handed them out, and that's why businesses were able to come in and set up shop without any accountability. Just speaking, as I said earlier, many months ago when I first brought this forward, I lost a parent to a tobacco-related death, and so this holds a lot of weight for me. And with my conscience, I know that it's clear. I would rather be known in history as protecting thousands of Vallejo students than I would for allowing 100 businesses or so to continue to knowingly sell poisons and toxins to children. And so I therefore think that we should have no transferability, of course, but I don't think that that's as reasonable as I want to be. So, I think that we can move ahead. We should try with 5 years and see how that goes. And we can always bring it back to council and re-review if that's not working. But I don't think that we should just have it be for eternity. We are in a health crisis. We have students who have begged us for help. Even Mother of the Year has a child who couldn't keep them from smoking. So I think that we need to do things to help those parents that are trying their hardest and they still can't get through to those knucklehead kids. So I think that we need to have something in place for that. I think we need to help those parents out. So I think that if we don't have something in place, if we don't have the transferability and at a certain point, then we will never get out of this predicament. We will continue to have 100 businesses who are selling tobacco products to children and the like, and I don't foresee that as a viable future for Vallejo. So I think that if we're going to do transferability, which I am amenable to, I think we should stick to 5 years and then reassess at the 5-year point whether we want to extend it or not at that point. Thank you.
Okay. Vice Mayor, you have a further comment? Go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to elaborate a little bit more or clarify what Councilmember Verdoliga was talking about with the arm length transfer. I think that what I'm hearing is the problem is that the current business owners feel that at some point their children are not going to want to continue with these businesses, and that is very understandable because the second generation of immigrants has a lot more opportunities than the first generation of immigrants. So a lot of their kids, my kids, are going on to college, universities, becoming doctors, lawyers, so they don't want these businesses. So to say that we have the arm length transfer, and that's supposed to be wonderful, it is, if they had a child that would want that transfer, but if they don't, that really doesn't help them in any way whatsoever. And I want to go back to what you said, Councilmember Bergenser, about the 100 businesses that are out there selling tobacco. So clarify, Veronica, please. How is it then? I mean, someone can just set shop and start selling tobacco, and we didn't regulate that? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I am saying that, yes. We treated it previously within the code as essentially allowed where retail sales are allowed. So convenience stores could do it, gas stations could do it. Now, we didn't regulate it. They still had to have a tobacco seller's license from the state, but we didn't have anything to say about that.
But we allowed it. We didn't go in and say you can't do this.
You are correct. We allowed it by the omission of any regulation.
Exactly, but the omission is ours, and we have to own it.
Well, let me be a little clearer about that. Starting in 2021, the new zoning code, remember that thing we adopted in 2021, did include some separation requirements. So we had a few speakers speak tonight about permittees that were new, that just popped up recently. Some of them may not get a license, and I want to point that out, because if they weren't in a location where they should have been allowed, they might not be able to obtain this license because they're technically non-conforming when they were established.
Right.
So we don't know that until we dig into it. I mean, one of the things, again, one of the reasons I added the additional time for staff to issue this, but we got to figure that out before we start issuing permits. And we have to figure it out individually for each and every retailer. It's a lot of research.
Right.
But that was the first time, as far as I know, that we started including location requirements in the code about tobacco sellers that were separate and apart from other types of retail. But that's only been a couple of years.
Right,
So,
it's been a
yeah.
couple of years, but we have people here that have had their businesses for 40 and 50 years.
Correct.
Okay, so that's where I'm coming from when I say that if you have a business owner that has been operating legally for 50 years, and we just now decided to change, the way we do business, it's not a fair way of just getting rid of people, because that's basically what it is. I mean, let's be realistic. This is an effort to get rid of people or their businesses. So the other thing that I want to say is, there's a lot of ordinances out there too. I mean, I'm sure there's some that have the transfer date, the transferability dates, but there's a lot of them out there too that don't have those transfer dates, that have a lot of what's in here already, but not the dates. So all I'm asking is that we pass the ordinance that's before us. It's very clear what they can and cannot do. The penalties are very clear. We just have to agree on whether it's a year, 5 years. Some want 5, some want 2, I want 1. So, there's 7 of us that we're going to have to vote on this, and that's going to be the final say. But the transferability, I continue to stand by what I said at the beginning, especially because now you're saying that some of them are not going to be able to qualify, so that'll eliminate a chunk. And then the pharmacies, which is not many of them, but if you consider the pharmacies that are selling, which would be what, the CVS? Walgreens?
Yeah, I think there's either 3 or 4 currently that have a pharmacy in them. So that could be a grocery store that has a pharmacy too. So,
right. So
yeah.
that'll eliminate a few, and then a few will be eliminated by default because they didn't get all their stuff in order. So that's going to bring the numbers down too. So we're actually looking at something that's not even accurate as far as what the numbers that we have, because some people their businesses are going to drop off.
Well, we have to lose half.
We do have to lose half, but that goes back to what I said. You can't just, I mean, I don't know how to say this nicely. I'm trying to choose really good words, but you can't just say, there's X amount of people in here and I'm going to throw out half of them. You can't. They all have a right to be in here listening to us. So the ones that have the businesses have a right to run a business without this is just like eliminating, and I don't like the way it sounds, and I'm sorry, I can't think of a better way. But yes, we want to protect the kids. Yes, there's a lot of things that we need to do, but at what price? Let's compromise and meet halfway. They have agreed to every single thing that's in the ordinance. Every single thing. They're asking for one thing, which is their livelihood of their business, to be able to support their families and to be able to retire and have a decent life after putting in 50 years. One thing. And we want to just the whole package. We don't want to give anything in. So I have a problem with that. And I'll be quiet now so the rest can speak.
Councilmember Matulak, followed by Councilmember Arreola.
Thank you, Mayor. Quick question on the transferability. Do we have a similar thing for alcohol as far as a time frame?
No, we don't. Our alcohol-related permits are a little bit different because all of the transfer for alcohol permits is controlled by ABC. We don't really deal with that. As you know, last night there was this whole discussion at the Planning Commission about transferring an alcohol permit to a new location, same owner. But I do think that, you know, that we're stepping on toes there we can't do anything about. So no, we do not have a similar provision for alcohol. We have a somewhat similar grandfathering position. I was not here then, so I'm not going to represent it in detail. But when the city council determined to license cannabis retailers, you licensed cannabis retailers and grandfathered everybody who was selling cannabis within the city, legally or not, on a specific date. And those are transferable. Now, when I say they're transferable, but somebody has to be able to qualify for the license. So it's split up as a use permit and a license, same as here. That's part of what this was patterned after. So these people are also going to have to get use permits. But new ones anyway, new people. So I don't think that there is a precedent within the city, but that precedent does have, under the cannabis retailers, they are allowed to transfer. But the idea is that they will, by attrition, the numbers will go down, right? Violations, they might be put out of business. They go out of business because they lose their lease. They, you know, transfer down because, go out of business because the new buyer can't get a license because they have a criminal background that won't let them get a license, et cetera. So I think that I can tell you that we started, and I don't know what year that ordinance went into effect, so I can't really tell you that right this minute. I think we started with 10 and we're down to 7. Okay, so between 2014 and 2024, so over 10 years, we dropped 3.
And so thank you for bringing that to light, the difference between the alcohol and the tobacco here, and the way you further explained it, there are built-in mechanisms for the transferability to where they still have to be approved and follow certain processes. So it's not just a simple transferability that it's a simple process from that standpoint. I think what the other part of this that we need to emphasize is for us to go down, we need to get rid of bad actors. And to be able to do that, I think if we bring that down to a person making violations within a year, we're going to get there sooner rather than later. So I'm more in favor of doing the 1 year of kicking out bad actors within that 1 year. And then my biggest question and kind of concern is from an enforcement standpoint. To get rid of bad actors, we need to enforce their violations. So especially with our staffing concerns at this point, how do we, as a city, be able to do that?
I think I lost track of that. I have to go back to your 1 year comment.
Yes.
It's backwards. Well, it's potentially backwards. So if you say 2 violations over a 5-year period, right? Then that means that your violations become cumulative. Your violation 1, if you make that violation in year 1, right, stays with you for 5 full years. So a second violation in year 3 or year 5 means you lose your transferability. I hate that word, but I'm going to use it again. Your transferability, your exemptions. If it's on 1 year, then every year it resets. You can violate 2 times a year all the way through, and you don't lose it.
Okay, so thank you for that
I
clarification.
think that was inverted of what your intent was.
So I'm trying to relate it to the 2 strikes you're out rule. And within 2 strikes, if you reach 2 strikes within 5 years, whether it's that first year, that second year, or that third year, you're out. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, if your intent is to say the strike rule,
Yes.
then, and you want the strike rule to be as onerous as possible, then you'd go for a longer time period.
So,
Strikes
so,
over-
so I'm in
strikes
favor
over
for the,
years.
so with that being said, I'm in favor for the 5 years, so you
Okay.
make sure you have to stay within
Okay,
5
ma-
years of the 2 strikes rule, so.
Got it. Now ask your other question again, because I lost it while I was thinking about this one. So tell me again.
I'm in favor of the 5-year to where it's, you have to stay clean
No,
for,
I'm sorry, I got that part.
yeah.
You started to ask a second question, and I interrupted your second question because I
Oh,
lost track of it.
It was the enforcement aspect
Okay.
of it. To ensure that you get to that 2 strikes, you have to enforce. You have to be able to identify it and enforce it.
That is correct. So
So-
on the enforcement side, we have been working together with the community, I keep calling it community development, but the planning division, community services is that what it's called? Planning and Development Services Division, who now has code enforcement under it. We will be working on a plan. That's part of what we're doing under the grant for our enforcement. It will be with code enforcement officers, likely with the help of our neighborhood law program, because that's where it's going to land in my office. I can just tell you that right now, which makes sense. It's part of what makes the community a more livable place, and that's what neighborhood law program is all about. So that enforcement, prosecution, and I say prosecution, enforcement before fines, et cetera, will all land there. So they will do the inspections and whatever else happens, and then the enforcement itself, the effectuation of those violations will fall to my office. That is how it will be enforced. If in fact we apply fee money that's our money collected from the licensing fees as opposed to grant monies, then we can also hire some outside contracting help for that. We cannot use the grant monies for that unless we apply for an amendment to the grant.
And so if I'm understanding this correctly, we're adding this enforcement of this new ordinance to the existing code enforcement officers.
Well, as augmented by my staff, the answer to that is,
okay.
that is yes.
So in other words, we're not having a new personnel coming in to do this specific enforcement. It's going to be added
Well,
within.
I'm not going to speak for the city manager, and I'm not going to speak for the planning director, who is sitting here in the room. There may be, as we roll out, a desire and or need and enough money from the fees to hire personnel dedicated only to that task. Okay. We're not there now. So initially, my answer to you is probably yes, because we're not going to be there in 60, 90, 120 days. But long-term, that's potentially an option. And again, we are looking at how many personnel hours. So when we bring the feedback to you, it's really personnel hours over number of businesses to be inspected and enforced. And so we're kind of looking at some averages there of what we think can be accomplished in a year, and then how that money can be allocated to enforcement or any other tasks under the ordinance. The initial first year, we're going to have a lot of work to do. We keep saying this, but it's a lot of work to issue 90 some odd permits, because of the necessity to look at the history of the business for each and every single one. So, at that point, we may be looking at using part of the TRL fees to get additional planning help to do some of that research for issuing. So I'm not going to represent to you that it's going to be all existing staff. It's going to be some combinations likely. City manager's agreeing with me.
And will enforce in other words, we've heard stories of current sting operations going on. Is that going to be, would that fall under some of the violations that currently occur?
Yes.
That would. Okay, so in other words, an outside organization can do a sting.
Well, so can we.
No, understood. But are we taking enforcement action if it isn't under the guise of the city of Vallejo doing a sting? That's my question.
I don't understand the question. I'm sorry.
In other words, because I think we've heard in the past where there's teenagers that go out to
Right.
tobacco, and identify if there's a tobacco shop that does
No,
that.
they just go try to do a buy, but yes.
Yes. So in other words, would them reporting that, would that fall under a violation?
With the teenager reporting it?
Yes.
No, we work, the city, enforcement actions,
Okay.
work in concert with getting somebody who either is a teenager or looks like a teenager to go try to effectuate those buys.
Okay.
Are they carded? Do they?
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I heard this incorrectly, but is council at any point part of this enforcement? Or in other words, for example, if there's an appeal, could that come in front of council for us to make a decision on something?
I hate to tell you that I have to go look at that, but I would have to look at it. So administrative fines, so we have an administrative citation ordinance where we impose administrative fines under the administrative citation ordinance. And I don't know where the final appeals go off the top of my head. So I would have to look that up to answer your question. I can let you know that before the second reading.
Okay, thank you.
Assuming it gets introduced.
Okay,
But, yeah.
that would be all my questions at this time.
Okay, we'll go to Councilmember Arlo.
Thank you. All right. So, Veronica, we have 100 plus tobacco retailers that include grocery stores, gas stations, and I'm just revisiting that.
It's
And,
slightly
and
under
drug
100.
stores.
It's actually slightly under 100, but not
Slightly
much.
under 100. And do we have a moratorium on introducing or accepting new licenses?
Only if you adopt this ordinance.
Okay, so that would help in that direction. Okay.
Right.
Good. And there was an example that you made to Councilmember Matulak about the dispensaries and that 3 were dropped. My question is, there was a death with one of the dispensary owners, and that dispensary is no longer around. So that by process of elimination through that death, there is no replacement.
Well, yes, because they never tried to reestablish it within the time period. So it
So
it
by
timed
default,
out. It timed out.
okay.
Yes.
So I'm all in favor of working with these family-run businesses, which is a lot different. They gave us a comparison between these pop-ups. This is really what they are. They're smoke shops. They're not businesses. They sell paraphernalia. They sell, all kinds of tobacco products, pipes, and those are smoke shops. And they also sell tobacco. But they don't do a service to the community at large like our neighborhood grocery and liquor stores do to a neighborhood. Granted, there's only a few bit of grocery items that you can get, but at least you can get something while you're in there. So it's a family-run business. I know the ones that I know of are clean, they're family-run, and I think that we should support them and really put our focus on, as Matulak said, the bad actors. And there are a lot of bad actors out there that are selling behind, under the counter, out of their car trunk or whatever, and those are the ones that we need to really focus on. So I'm going to go along with Council Majority as far as this transferability. That's the one thorn in our side right there, is that particular transferability to help these folks. And then as far as the year, I don't know, I'm going to listen to more comments. We heard 1 year, we heard 5 years, we heard 2 years. So I'm going to wait and hold back. Thanks.
Okay, just for purposes of clarity, council member, are you saying that you are in favor of what the vice mayor stated of deleting the restrictions on transferability in their entirety? Okay. Is
Yes.
that correct? Okay.
All right, Councilmember Verdoliga.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quickly, if I remember correctly, initially in the first meetings, public health already has, will recommend a nonprofit that will help with the enforcement. Did you remember that was brought up before? That would be a way to start the enforcement. And then depending on how much, I mean, that will be a decision of the city manager, but I just wanted to put it out there.
So, yes and no. So I have talked to them.
Okay.
It is an option potentially. Again, it's not an option for the expenditure of the grant funding we
Okay,
received.
I know that.
Because of the way we applied
But
for the
from the
grant.
fees that's collected, we can, depending on how much we collect, because it will take about 6 months for them to apply. There will be 6 months, and I'm hoping that the guidelines for application
Yeah,
will be simple.
It will be some accounting difficulty, but we can take care of that.
Yeah,
Yes.
because as you know, many of the owners are, are not English proficient, if I may say. That's not an insult.
Correct.
But for them to have help in terms of how to fill out an
apply.
application, how to
Right.
apply.
So we can spend some of that grant money on retailer education, and we can spend it on retailer education can include, how do we get through this process, making sure they all understand it, doing some informational outreach in multiple languages, those things we will
That's
be
good.
looking to do.
Can you explain to me again the difference between the transferability of 5 years or 10 years?
So,
If the transferability section is
So
passed by the majority,
yes.
so Councilmember Briganza said he'll go for 5 years, and then maybe the future council can change that to 10 or eliminate it totally.
Correct. So in that section 3A on page 10 of the ordinance, which is page 988 on your red right-hand side. Sorry, that's just a me thing, but
Page 10, you said?
page 10 of the ordinance. So, page 10 of the red line version. So look at the red line version, it's just easier. You can see under 3A, the highlighted portion, highlighted in yellow for you. I hope on your electronic
I see
version?
it, I see it.
Okay. So, Councilmember Bergenzer's choice was January 1st of 2026, which means that they could transfer their location exemption until December 31, 2025. Yeah, that didn't work out. Those dates are wrong.
No.
Sorry. That is not, 2026 is not the right date. So if this goes into effect, so this should be.
It says 2031, so it's from the 26th to 31.
No, it's not. It's my typo. Sorry.
So what should it be?
Hang up. So the first version, the first bracketed should be. So it's going into effect 25, 26, should be 30, 2030. My apologies. Apparently I can't do math.
But that's assuming that they already have their license issued, if it will take 6 months.
No, from the effective date of the ordinance is where I was going with the 5 years, not when they received the ordinance. I don't recommend that we have a deadline that moves depending on when somebody got their permit. So I just wanted to hit a hard line. You can make it anywhere you want, actually. But I would say, I said 2030, and then it would be 2035.
For 10 years.
So the 10 years would be 2035, the 5 years would be 2030. I don't actually care what date the council picks. I was just throwing some out there. If you pick a date at all. So there you go.
Okay, Councilmember Palmares.
But
Just a quick question. For the violations, is there a fine associated with those violations?
yes,
How much is it?
to be established.
I see. Okay, and just to kind of recap everything, so it seems like the two things we have to decide tonight is the length of time for the arm's length transaction, correct? And two, the period of time for the two or more violations. Those are the only two things we got to work on right now, right? Okay.
Okay, first of all, let me regroup on the answer to your question. The fine question.
Okay.
So the fine is not less than 250 and not exceeding 1,000 per violation, as listed in the ordinance on section 150 on page 16. So that answers that question. That's in a civil action, as opposed to we can ask for injunctive relief or enforce by the administrative citation ordinance. If we enforce through the administrative citation ordinance, we will need to amend that ordinance to establish the penalty. Following me? Maybe
Yep.
not, but yeah.
I do.
Okay, so I'm correcting myself on that, and while I was busy trying to find the correction for myself, I lost track of your second question. Ask again?
Just clarifying the things that we need to agree on.
Make a choice on? Yep.
So the arm's length transaction, the period of time for that, and also the period of time for the 2 or more violations.
Yes, sir, the
Okay.
2 yellow highlighted provisions in the, I tried to make it really simple.
Thank
but
you, I appreciate
yes.
that. So for me, for the arm's length transaction, 5 years. And for the 2 or more violations, 1 to 2 years, no more than 2 years for me.
Hold on one second, so. Yeah. Got it. I am.
Okay. I've heard different years for transferability, anywhere from none whatsoever to 2, 5. I would suggest maybe we consider a 7-year period as sort of a compromise to get something done. But, because the opinions have gone all over the board from this dais, which is why I put out 7. Okay, I can live with 5 or even less, but I think to reach consensus, we're probably going to have to be a little bit more flexible on that requirement. Ms. Knapp, just a question to clarify. On 5.10.010, arm's length transactions.
Hold on, I'm sorry, 510.010?
Uh-huh. You had earlier said cousins, but this seems to say it's limited to first cousins. Is that what we're adopting, is a limitation to transferability to first cousins only, not second or third?
As written, but the council can change that if you'd like to.
Okay, I agree with it. It should be beyond first cousins. The other word I have in there is cohabitant. I mean, that can be anybody who moves into the household, a roommate. I would urge that we strike that word completely. Cohabitant.
Cohabitant.
Yeah.
That's fine if the rest of the
'Cause
council agrees.
It's overly broad.
We have domestic partner included.
Well, we define domestic partner. That's
We-
different. That
correct.
requires a filing with the Secretary of State's
Understand.
office. But a
the rest
cohabitant
you-
is a roommate.
Okay.
It could be anybody.
Does everybody agree with that?
Okay,
All
thank
right.
you.
Struck.
And then the penalty, I just want to make sure that it's cumulative, whether it's over a 1-year, 2-year, 5-year period, that you don't get a reset after a certain period of time.
Tell me which penalty you mean.
Well,
The
the
penalty
idea
for
was,
the fines?
You have 3 strikes and you're out, 2 strikes and you're out. Different people have said different things.
It says within a 5-year period.
Yeah. As long as it does, so at the end of 5 years, it resets, people can,
That is correct.
okay. All right, well, I think we're probably prepared to try to adopt an ordinance with some of these modifications, but I'm not certain we're going to be able to articulate it with sufficient clarity tonight where we maybe shouldn't bring it back in a final version at another council hearing. I know you don't like that idea, and I don't either, but
Let
we've
me
been throwing
try
around a lot of
first,
ideas.
please. Please let me try first.
Well, through the mayor, do we make a motion, or is
Wait.
the city attorney going to
We can make a motion and
dictate
to
what?
do anything
No,
we
I was
want.
not intending to dictate. I was going to suggest that we try some motions here to try to move it along and see if we can get consensus on the 2 choices. So I'll leave somebody to make a motion and see where it goes.
Okay, so we still need clarity on the length of time for the penalties and the transferability. There doesn't seem to be clear consensus, which is why I suggested the 7 years, and I think I can support the
May I make a
3 violations in 5 years. Yes.
Sorry, I was going to try to make a suggestion that we pick these off with a straw vote. The question of first, how many violations over how many years? Somebody make a motion for a straw vote and you take a straw vote on that one. And then second, the how many years it would be transferable for or delete entirely, and see if we can reach consensus on those. And once you do that, then we'll take on the main motion of introducing the ordinance.
All right, well, why don't we start with 3 violations in 5 years and see how that flies?
Oh, you want to increase the number to 3 over 5?
Well, not more than 3 violations in a 5-year period.
Okay, sure, right.
We'll just go down the line and say yay or nay. Peter?
Yay.
No.
1 and 1.
No.
1 and 2, I'll say yay.
Nay.
That's 3.
Nay.
That's 4, it loses already.
Okay.
So somebody else have a different idea.
Let's try.
I'll make a substitute motion. 3 violations in 1 year period.
All right, well, Peter?
Nay.
Yes.
Nay.
Yes.
You got that because I missed it.
1, 2, 3.
I'm lost.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, looks like a 4-3.
So that's
So
1 year.
did that pass?
Yes.
Okay, so 3 violations in 1 year, majority says
3 in 1
yes.
year.
1 year. Okay, that's
Okay. Next is length of transferability.
I would like to make a motion that we do 5 years.
Okay, 5.
Can I, instead of saying 5 years, your 5 years is till January 1,
January
2030?
1, 2030. Yay.
No.
Roseanne?
no.
Yay.
Nay.
3.
Yay.
It's your shot. We're 3-3 right now.
Could you repeat it? Could you repeat that?
The transferability would expire on January 1st of 2030.
5 years. That means there's transfer rate.
No.
Okay, so that didn't go.
7.
I'll make a substitute motion.
Go ahead.
I make a motion to eliminate 3A, which would mean that the transferability would be indefinite.
No.
You're a yes, Rosanna?
No.
No.
Yay. Yay.
2 yeas.
Nay.
Yay.
Nope.
I lost the track there, sorry.
4. 4 nay.
3 to 4.
I'll make a motion to do 7, transferability.
Okay, Peter?
Yay.
1.
Definitely no. Definitely.
Rosanna?
Definitely no.
Okay.
Definitely no.
Oh, it's still, here.
Yes. Oh, too many.
Okay, yes for 7.
Yes.
Nay.
Yes.
No.
No, I thought there were 4 that voted no.
Yeah, there's, how many? What did? He said yes to 7. No. I said yes to 7.
Said yes.
Said no.
Yes.
Charles said yes to 7.
Through the mayor, can I get clarification on one thing? So once this is passed, we're about to get a new council. Is this something that can be revisited and can be reopened and changed at a later time? Okay, I want to make one more recommendation, if I may.
Go ahead.
Okay, since it looks like, my original motion didn't go, I want to make a motion for 15 years.
That motion
I
would be
know,
out of, that motion would be out of order because it's already been passed at 7.
Well, you
What
just said that I
What
could.
you can do is, we can hold it on the first reading tonight, and then the second reading could be with the new council if you want to try that shot.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I know you don't like it, but.
If you're going to kick it to the new council, just kick it to the new council. I mean, from my perspective, I'm just saying.
No, we don't want to kick it to the new council.
You can't do a first reading with one council and a second
Okay.
reading with another. That's not lawful. So I'm just
All
saying.
right. Well, then
Okay,
it
choose your
passed.
poison here.
Transferability then was set at 7 on this, by this council. They can change it when they want to. So,
So when is the second?
At your next meeting.
next meeting.
So at the second meeting, can we change to 10?
No.
If you want 10, you should vote 10 now.
Well, you can. These are straw votes. You can take any straw vote
Through
you
the
want.
mayor, through the mayor. The only reason that I blurted that out is because I'm hearing a council member saying that she's thinking of 10 years, yet you just voted for 7. So was
So
it 7, or did you get confused?
No,
these-
it was 7.
These are straw votes.
They are
So,
straw
you know,
votes.
why don't we try the straw vote for 10?
Okay, because I was leaning towards 10. I think that's in between 7 and 15, because I don't want to eliminate the transferability clause. Because,
All right.
I mean, I know that the tobacco retail licenses are in favor of, 90%, but I also, need to understand the point of view of the public health, the LGBTQ, minus tobacco.
All right, this is a straw vote only. We haven't gotten to the ordinance yet. We'll lock it in.
Okay.
So Peter, yes to
I'll go for
10 or no?
No.
No. Mina, yes?
At least it's something that's better.
I want the indefinite.
You want indefinite?
I
Okay.
want indefinite.
So
I
you're a no.
insist on indefinite.
You're a no on this one. Rosanna?
So if the 10 doesn't pass, then the 7 is the go, because that's what the majority voted on. Okay, I'll go for the 10.
So you're going with yes, I'll go with yes.
Nay.
No.
Okay. So it's the 7.
Back to 7.
And it's back to 7.
Okay.
All right.
7 is 2032, by the way, in case anybody wants to know.
We want to take a stab at a real ordinance? Vice
Okay.
Mayor?
So, just to help some direction here, the recommendation appears obviously on page 1 of the staff report. If you introduce the ordinance the way we wrote this thing, there's a base ordinance that has all of the attachments to it, so you only have to adopt one ordinance. It does make some modifications to a bunch of ordinances, but it is one base. That ordinance is in your packet immediately following the red line version that we've just been using all night long. And it amends chapter 7, it adopts 5.10, amends 768, 16301, 16340, and 16701, and repeals 7.69. So that one ordinance does all of those things. I tried to make this simpler so it wouldn't be a nightmare tonight, so there you go. That would require a motion and a second, and a vote of 4 of you.
Vice Mayor, you want to make the motion?
And
I think the
in the
person that
motion,
voted
please-
for it should make the motion. I don't want to make this motion. I'm not in favor of it.
Okay. Chair, yes?
So just to clarify for the violations, we agreed on 3 for 1 year?
You landed on 3 violations within 1 year, you lose the transferability, transferability of the exemption.
May I
Yes.
make an alternate motion for that one?
Well, there's no motion on the floor at all yet.
Okay.
So whoever makes the motion to introduce the ordinance should make clear what their motion includes relative to those 2 choices.
Okay, so
The 3 in 1 year violations and the 7 years or to January 1, 2032.
right. So instead of the 3 violations in 1 year, I'd like to motion for 2 violations in 1 year. We're-
Well, again,
But
those
we
were
didn't.
straw
We didn't go over
votes.
2.
I vote yes.
You want to change it to 2? I'm sorry.
I vote yes for 2 in 1 year.
No.
No. No. No.
Nay.
Yes.
Nay.
Well, we're back back to 3 and 1, okay? Remember, a council can change it. So chair will move the adoption of the ordinance with the violations being not greater than 3 violations in a 1-year period, a limitation of 7 years on transferability, and the striking of the word cohabitant.
I will make a substitute motion. I think they should be separated because we had a very different, straw vote. So I will move to have 3 violations in 1 year, vote on that separate, and then do the other part.
Okay, Vice Mayor has made a request to sever the elements. That's addressed to the discretion of the chair. The chair will deny it unless somebody wishes to appeal it and ask for a vote on my ruling. No. Okay. So the motion is on the screen. Please vote yes to adopt the first reading as stated, or no to reject the first reading.
Missing a vote. There we go. That motion carried with Vice Mayor Loretta Diaz and Councilmember Matulik opposed.
All right, that concludes the first action item of this evening. It is now 10:16. We will take a break until 10:25.